You ever wonder why some paver patios look absolutely perfect for years, but then others, they start shifting, fading, and sprouting weeds after just like one season? Well, the secret isn't just about a quick cleaning. It's actually about science. So let's dive right into what really goes into a paver restoration that's truly built to last. And this one idea right here, it's really what everything boils down to. This is the core belief that separates a real restoration specialist from, say, just a pressure washing service. See, we're not just looking at some dirty stones. No, we're analyzing a complete interlocking system, an engineering assembly. And believe me, every single step in that system absolutely matters. All right, so here's our game plan. We're going to walk through the whole thing in 5 key stages. We'll start with the overall philosophy, then get into the science of getting a deep clean, building that rock-solid foundation, creating the perfect finish, and then, of course, how to protect your investment. Okay, first up, the philosophy. Because to really get what we're talking about, you first have to understand that there are 2 totally different ways people approach paver care out there. And trust me, they are not created equal. So, on one hand, you've got what we call the high-volume clean and seal. This is all about speed and cosmetic fixes, using whatever materials are cheap and convenient. But then, on the other hand, you have precision-focused restoration. This is a deep, scientific approach that treats your pavers like the engineered system they actually are. The difference in the final result? It's literally night and day. All right, let's talk about the science behind getting a truly clean surface. Because here's the bottom line, you simply can't build a lasting finish on a bad foundation. It all starts with perfect prep work. And that means we have to tackle the biggest and, frankly, most misunderstood enemy of pavers right from the get-go. You know that chalky white haze you sometimes see on pavers? The stuff you can't seem to wash off no matter what you do? Well, that's called efflorescence. And what's wild is that it isn't actually dirt or a stain. It's a chemical thing. Salts from deep inside the paver work their way to the surface and then they crystallize. It's a science problem, not a dirt problem. So that leads to a really important question. What happens if you just seal right over that white haze? This is probably the most common and the most costly mistake in the entire industry. Just think about it. What happens when you trap that layer of salt crystals under a sealer? Well, 2 things happen, and honestly, they're both a total disaster. First, you permanently lock in that ugly white haze. Your pavers will look cloudy forever. There's no going back. And second, the sealer doesn't even bond to the paver. It bonds to that layer of salt, which means, it's just going to peel and flake off. Your entire investment just gone. So, how do you fix it the right way? Well, the cheap and easy shortcut some people take is raw muriatic acid. That stuff is nasty. It's super corrosive, it can damage the pavers, and it'll rust any metal nearby like your screen enclosure. The proper way, our way, is to use advanced buffered organic acids. These are engineered to target only the salt crystals. They dissolve the problem without harming the paver or anything else around it. It's really precision chemistry versus just brute force. Okay, so now that the surface is chemically pure, we can move on to the structural core of the entire system, the joints between the pavers. This is where we shift gears from chemistry to physics, the physics of what actually holds everything together. First things first, you've got to get all that old, contaminated sand out of there. Now, the common method is just blasting it out with a pressure washer. The problem? That completely soaks the base layer underneath, trapping a ton of moisture that's going to cause huge problems down the road. The right way is to use high-volume air. It precisely evacuates the old sand to the exact depth you need, all while keeping that critical foundation bone dry. And this brings us to what might be the single most important decision in this whole process, and it's one you're probably not even making: the sand. Seriously. Using cheap, rounded play sand, that's like filling the joints with millions of tiny ball bearings. The pavers are just going to shift and slide around. The professional standard, what should be used, is ASTM C144 angular sand. The grains are sharp and they lock together like a puzzle, turning the whole surface into one rigid, stable slab. And you don't have to take my word for it. The data speaks for itself. Look at the grain shape, angular versus rounded. The impact is simple. The angular grains lock together, the round ones just roll. Then look at the fines content. That's basically just clay and dust. The right sand has less than 1%. Play sand, it's loaded with it. And what happens when that clay gets wet? it turns into a slippery mess that actually lubricates the joints, making everything even more unstable. All right, so we've got a chemically clean surface and a rock-solid foundation built with the right sand. Now it's time to create that perfect finish. And this part is all about two things: total moisture control and the polymer science behind the sealer itself. Look, especially in a humid climate, you can't just cross your fingers and hope the pavers are dry enough to seal. That's a recipe for disaster. Any moisture trapped inside will completely ruin the finish. That's why we have this saying: we don't hope for dry conditions, we create them. And how do we do that? With high BTU propane torches. This is so cool because it does two critical things at the exact same time. First, that intense heat forces every last drop of trapped moisture out of the pavers and the sand. And second, it literally incinerates any leftover weed seeds or mold spores. So what you're left with is a completely sterile surface, perfect for the sealer to grab onto. So what are we sealing with? Well, we're definitely not talking about those cheap solvent-based acrylics you grab off the shelf at a big box store. That stuff turns yellow in the sun and just creates a weak little film on the surface. No, we're talking about industrial-grade two-part urethanes. These things are on another level. They actually provide structural support by turning the sand mortar hard, and they're completely non-yellowing so they can handle the sun for years to come. And applying this stuff is a science in itself. First, the two parts have to be mixed with mechanical precision, following the technical specs to the letter. No eyeballing it. Then, we apply a heavy flood coat. The whole point is to completely saturate that angular sand in the joints, basically gluing it all into one solid piece. And finally, we use specific spray and backroll techniques to make sure the finish is perfectly even with zero pools or streaks. Okay, we're in the home stretch now, but the job isn't over just because the sealer is down. The final phase is all about protecting your investment. That means making sure it's safe and making sure you know how to partner with us in keeping it perfect. I mean, what good is a beautiful, shiny surface if it's a slip and slide waiting to happen? The old way to add grip was to just throw some sharp sand into the sealer. It feels terrible on your bare feet, and it never spreads out evenly. The modern professional solution is micronized polymer grit. These are tiny, lightweight beads that suspend perfectly evenly in the sealer. The result is a soft roughness, a safe, non-slip surface that's still comfortable to walk on. So, this brings us to the big question, right? The one every single homeowner asks. After all this work, is my patio now maintenance-free? That's a fair question, so let's tackle it head-on. The honest truth is, nothing in life is truly maintenance-free. Now, what our process does is it creates a fortress. It completely stops weeds from growing up from the bottom, from the soil. But what we can't stop is Mother Nature from dropping airborne seeds on top. But here's the good news. The maintenance is super simple. All you have to do is take a leaf blower to your patio every couple of weeks. That removes the organic dust that new seeds would need to grow. That's literally it. And that really brings us full circle, back to this quote: the gold standard every time. That's not just some catchy slogan. It's our technical specification. This isn't about just trying hard or having good intentions. Every single step we've just walked through, the chemistry, the physics, the polymers, it's all part of a strict, non-negotiable process that's engineered to deliver a predictable, superior result. So when you look at your own pavers, the question you have to ask yourself is this: am I looking for a quick, temporary clean, or am I ready for a true restoration that's engineered to last for years? Because really, understanding that difference, that's the key to protecting one of your home's biggest and most beautiful assets.